What's up everybody, I'm Maran and this is the 2022 Nissan Frontier Pro-4X. So about the Frontier here, well, this is the entirely new next generation version of the Frontier, and while there are a few parts that carry over from the old Frontier, I mean, it has been heavily reworked, and obviously you see there's completely brand new styling here and lots of other good changes and updates underneath the skin as well. But as far as the styling goes, I think it's the best looking midsize truck out there right now. I just love the boxy looks up front there, and those daytime running lights there with the LEDs and stuff just look really sharp, and especially I really love this dark green color. I do love dark green vehicles in general, but it looks really good here on the Frontier. And it's also kind of cool with the Pro-4X how you have the more rugged treatment there with like the red Nissan badge, which by the way is the new Nissan styling for their badging. You also have, you know, the tow hooks in red and the skid plates, and you know, the more rugged look here of the Pro-4X is really cool. But I think even, you know, the more standard versions of the Frontier for 2022 also look very sharp and you know, nicely stand out, I think, from the other trucks out there these days. Other things here, so coming down to the sides, one of the other benefits of the Pro-4X is that you have these 17-inch wheels that are beadlock style, and then you also have these all-terrain tires, which you only get here on the Pro-4X version. And to further help with off-roading, the Pro-4X versions also have Bilstein dampers to go along with those skid plates, and you also have an electronic locking rear differential. And so those are the main upgrades there for the Pro-4X in addition to the cooler styling here. This one also has the optional side steps along with those sport bars there to adorn the bed in the back. So especially with those little add-ons, which are optional, by the way, those are not standard on a Pro-4X, but if you add those on optionally, I think this actually gives it even a little bit more aggression than even a regular Pro-4X. And then going out to the back, I love how you still have Frontier emblazoned into the tailgate there. You have the new tail lights, another 4X badge there on the back, as well as this one also has an optional little step that you can kick down. And I really like it because unlike some other trucks that have a really heavy step, a smaller guy like myself, it's much easier to use this step here. Very easy to push down and push up, and really helps you get into that bed there nicely. And speaking of the bed there, you'll see that it's a damped tailgate now, which is great. You also have a few little cutouts for cup holders there in it. And then you'll also see a good sized bed there. It's just under 5 feet long. You have a plug there in the side of it. There's also various tie downs, and there's that whole system back there, which is also an optional add-on. The spray and bed liners, part of an option package. All those things, you know, but it's nice it has that. You also have little overhead lighting there in the back. So, you know, should be a good usable bed right in line with what you got in any other mid-size truck here, at least the body on frame stuff. So yeah, overall, I think that, you know, the new Frontier just looks fantastic. They did a great job on this restyle. The interior in the new Frontier is also really nicely improved over the old vehicle. I mean, the old one was very dated, and so this is probably the biggest improvement here to the Frontier is the interior. And so they made some nice changes. Now it's still, you know, feels fairly cheap in here, just like any other body on frame mid-size trucks. I mean, none of them are really rolling palaces or anything, but you know, it's all pretty rugged and durable, and you do have some nice soft touch materials here on all your elbow points and touch points and stuff, but you do have a lot of, you know, cheaper hard plastic. And in a vehicle like this one is as tested about $46,000. You know, at that price point, some things start to seem a little less acceptable, but still is totally fine. And I think the tech is actually one of the better ones in the body on frame midsize truck segment. So anyway, first thing though, sitting down in these seats, you have these nice zero gravity seats, which is a signature Nissan thing. And they've been really comfortable so far in the first few days here that I've been driving this truck. And here on the Pro-4X here, you have the leatherette seating here, which has a little bit like a carbon fiber pattern on the sides here. Just nice looking seats and pretty comfortable too. The steering wheel is also really great. Has a nice 9-3 grip, nice 10-2 notches here, just a few buttons here on it, and that's about it. It's also a heated steering wheel though, with this one having this convenience package that also adds a dual mode heated seat as well. And so great to have both of those. And the steering wheel gets really hot actually. It's like gets so hot that I actually have to turn it off after a few minutes because it's you know, nice and strong, so that's good. The gauges here in the Frontier are also nice and simple, but you do have that nice large digital portion there, which is one of the larger digital portions out there in this segment. And so good amount of info in there. You have lots of auxiliary gauges. You can see your normal trip information stuff, as well as even showing you like your audio information, but there's also like an off-road page, so you can see the angle the truck is sitting at and fun little things like that. But it basically does everything you would want it to do here. So I really like this gauge setup. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here though, another huge improvement here is that you have this 9-inch touchscreen. Now that is an option. In lower versions of the Frontier, you will have an 8-inch screen, still the same menus, still the same setup and everything. So you just get an extra inch here in these top versions. Not a big deal. Unfortunately, unlike other Nissans where the 9-inch screen has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, in this it is still wired. So going up to that bigger screen size is just purely an aesthetic thing and doesn't actually improve any kind of functionality really. But it would be nice to see the wireless integration here, since again this is a brand new generation truck. That is certainly nice not having to plug in your phone. So I wish it had that. That's my only real complaint though, honestly, with the infotainment. But it still is really good with all the basics. You know, thankfully you have a huge volume and tune knob, so very easy to tune all the radio stations. Very simple to navigate this menu system. It's not overly complicated or anything. And then coming down, you'll see just your basic climate controls here, nice and simple. And that's about it. I really like these little grab handles here by the shifter as well, which are a nice little touch. Storage space though here in the Frontier is also very good. You have pockets in the doors with a large bottle holder. In the middle here you have a nice big bin, as well as a nice other rubberized bin here on top of the dashboard. There's 2 cup holders and also a really large wireless charging pad here. The way this one is equipped, my iPhone 13 Pro fits in there with plenty of room to spare. So even if you have one of those really massive phones, it'll fit in there just fine, and that's probably nicely future-proofed as well. You have a center armrest here, which has a little bit of padding to it, and you know, feels again nice enough for this segment. You open that up and you'll see a nice big bin with a power outlet in there. You also have another power outlet by your climate controls here, so you have 2 of those. And so yeah, I think, you know, as far as mid-sized trucks go, I think this has a really good amount of storage space. Backseat space here in this crew cab configuration is okay. It's not the best backseat in this segment, I don't think, but it's decent. So you have a fairly high seating position and the floor is kind of high, so you kind of feel like you're almost like perched on that bench instead of actually sitting down in it. But good amount of headroom and stuff still, but I'm 5'9" and I still have, you know, a couple inches of legroom to spare there, so at least that's all good. Otherwise though, you have, when you look forward, a USB jack and USB-C jack, as well as a normal house current plug, which is great to have there. There's also a full down center armrest with 2 cup holders in it, and you also see little pockets in the doors, and that seat does fold up as well. So you'll see here, this one has the optional Fender stereo. With that, you'll see the driver's side is taken up by a subwoofer. Otherwise you would have a little bin there, but you'll see on the passenger side you have a nice large bin there when you flip up that seat, and so great to have that little bit of extra storage as well. But if you're someone who doesn't need a back seat, it is also great that they still offer a king cab configuration, which is basically a 2-door with a very tiny little back seat if you just need it in a pinch. But great that they still offer that, although unfortunately that bed configuration is not available here on the Pro 4X version. That is only on other versions of the Frontier. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Frontier here still uses the old Nissan key. They just kind of swapped in the new logo on it. There it is. But you see still the same kind of buttons you've had on these things for a long time now, but it's a nice small key. So honestly, even though it's not cool and, you know, interesting looking, it just works great. And it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button here, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2022 Frontier. Well, the first thing that I think I really appreciate about the Frontier is just how good the throttle and the brake response is. And that might sound like an odd thing to appreciate, but compared to the Tacoma, that's my number one thing. Everyone loves Tacomas, but they have the mushiest throttle response, and it's like you have to push the gas pedal down halfway to get it to go anywhere. And this is nicely responsive. Now, it's not, you know, sports car sharp or anything, but it just does what you want it to do. And, you know, again, that sounds like something that wouldn't be hard to do these days, but it's getting more and more rare to have cars where you just hit the gas and it does what you expect it to do. This does that. Brakes, same deal. You have a tiny bit of a travel to the pedal before it starts biting down, but it's very easy to be smooth with the brakes. They feel really good and strong. You also have hydraulic steering, which is still so nice to have. That's something you don't really get in a lot of modern vehicles these days. And so, you know, just having the direct response of it and just the natural feeling you get through the steering wheel, it just gives you, this whole experience is just very natural. And you know, if you're someone who's especially used to the old Frontier, you're gonna feel right at home, I think, with, you know, the more old school feeling of everything just doing exactly what you want it to do. And unlike like newer stuff like the Ford Ranger with its turbo engine and stuff, you know, you have a nice honest V6 here that just gives you a downshift and accelerates. There's no turbo stuff or anything. Now that means that you do have to rev this engine more. You know, the Ranger is definitely the hot rod of the body on frame mid-size truck segment, because that thing really has a lot of punch down low. This has less, but you now have a 9-speed automatic as well, and so that will help you to find the best gear possible. You have 9 gears, it's plenty to pick from, and it does a good job of maximizing this engine, which I'll talk about more once we do an acceleration here. But so I mean, all those things make it really easy to drive too. Another thing that makes it pretty easy to drive is, of course, you have a nice high seating position here. Even though the A-pillars are a little thicker than I would like, it's very easy to see around everything. You have a great view out. View out of the back is, of course, great in typical truck fashion. I also just like that the Frontier hasn't really grown much, and so it doesn't feel like an enormous thing, and so it actually feels like a mid-sized truck, which is nice. Another thing I'm pretty impressed by with the Frontier here is actually how quiet it is, which is not something I was really expecting out of this truck, honestly. But even with these all-terrain tires, it's pretty subdued in here, and so it's just a little quieter than I was expecting, which is a nice little surprise. Another thing, though, that's really great is that you have a pretty smooth ride as well. I mean, obviously, you still have a tiny bit of the jitteriness you get with a body-on-frame truck, but it's not bad. They've come a long way, and I think it's, a nice improvement, and certainly feels a little more polished than like a Chevy Colorado, I think, would, but it still, again, does not hold a candle to all the unibody pickup trucks like the Honda Ridgeline and the Hyundai Santa Cruz. But, so there is no sport mode or anything here, but let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it accelerates. And here we go. Okay, pretty responsive. And it accelerates pretty good. So, it's not going to light your hair on fire, but it's a good amount of power. It's actually best in class horsepower now from this 3.8 liter V6, which was actually new last year, strangely, in the final year of the old Frontier. And so now it's carried over here, but it's basically a brand new engine. It does 310 horsepower and 281 pound-feet of torque. And so while that horsepower is best in class, that doesn't give it best in class acceleration. I think the Ranger is still a lot punchier. It has a lot more torque, and that turbo motor kicks in right away in that. So that is going to feel a good bit faster. If you want the fastest, mid-sized body-on-frame truck, definitely go for the Ranger. But otherwise, I'd say this is, a good, strong amount of power. The 9-speed automatic does a really good job of maximizing it. Interestingly, though, another thing is that the 0 to 60 time, when Car and Driver tested it, it was basically the same as the old Frontier with its old engine. It gets about a 7.3 second 0 to 60 time. But again, no one's using these as drag racers. Not a big deal. It's a mid-sized pickup truck. 7.3 seconds 0 to 60 is still totally fine, and even slightly quicker than some of the average, smaller crossovers you get out on the road these days. So no complaints with the power. In the Pro-4X here, you also have a 4-wheel drive system, but it's a shift-on-the-fly 4-wheel drive system. They said that their customers weren't interested in any kind of automatic 4-wheel drive system or anything like that. So with this, you just have a little switch here, and that's how you change it. And, so I guess if that's what their customers wanted, then that's totally fine. I think it would be nice, though, to have, an automatic setting for those who, don't love messing with a 4-wheel drive switch. But, that's not a big deal, and certainly something you can get used to. We're coming up some corners here, though, and let's see how the Frontier handles them. So still a pretty big, heavy thing. It's, like under 4,800 pounds, but it handles itself fairly well for a mid-sized pickup. So they did do a lot of improvements to the suspension, and the frame is still a ladder frame, but the whole chassis has been heavily revised, and lots of parts have been changed, so that it doesn't really share very much, if anything, with the old Frontier. So it's been heavily reworked, and so you still have like a solid rear axle in the back and leaf springs, but you now do have sway bars all around. And previously you did not have a sway bar in the back. Now you do have one in the back, so that's nice. And as a result, you'll have much better handling than the old Frontier. And as far as other mid-sized body-on-frame pickup trucks go, I would say this is probably one of the better ones out there. I still think the Ranger might handle a little bit better, but I think this is actually very good handling, especially even with these all-terrain tires. You might get even better handling on the other versions, although these Bilstein dampers on the Pro-4X might help you a little bit with handling, but it's not going to be anything sporty, but handles totally fine, and combined with that nice, smooth, quiet ride and stuff, like I said, I think for a mid-sized pickup truck, this has a good amount of polish. Two other specs that are important to truck buyers is the payload and the tow ratings. So max payload for these is 1,610 pounds, just for Frontiers in general. Max towing is 6,720 pounds as well. But anyway, let's hit the highway and see how it does out there. And now out on the highway here, the Frontier has a good amount of polish here as well. I mean, you have obviously some elevated road noise now, and so, that kind of is par for the course in this segment. But I don't think that it's unacceptable or anything. I think it's totally fine. You also do have adaptive cruise control here, the way this one is configured. And so we have that running here, and it's doing a great job so far. Now, it doesn't attempt to do any kind of steering assist for you or anything like that. It doesn't have the Pro Pilot Assist system that Nissan has in some of their other models. And so, I think that for truck buyers, that's fine. I don't think anyone's going to be upset that they're not having their truck steer for them or anything. And it does a great job here, just cruising, very calmly. The 9-speed automatic, we're able to just kind of coast at like 1,500 RPMs, and no roar from the engine or anything really. And yeah, it just is a nice highway cruiser, honestly. In addition to that adaptive cruise control system, though, you also have blind spot monitoring, automatic emergency braking, and some of that stuff is optional, but the automatic emergency braking is standard. And so safety tech here is all good. It does also have lane departure warning, so it will warn you if you're leaving the lanes if you want to have that on. But thankfully, if you do turn it off, like I have it off currently, and it doesn't turn itself back on automatically. So it's one of those things that remembers the settings, so if you want to turn that stuff off, you can turn it off and it won't bother you. So yeah, I'd say that my first impressions here of the new Frontier are that it's actually probably one of my favorite driving trucks in this segment. It's just really nice to drive. But thanks to Nissan, I'm going to have the Frontier here for an entire week. So I'm going to drive around all over the place, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, as well as my thoughts on the pricing and how it compares to its competitors, as well as anything else that I noticed during my week of driving. All right, so I've been driving the Frontier here for a week now, and I've put about 95 miles on it in that time. And I've really enjoyed my time with it. And it goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, that, I just really think it's one of my favorite driving trucks in this segment as far as mid-sized body-on-frame pickup trucks go. I've just had a very pleasant experience with it. There were two little things that I did notice here throughout the course of my week. The first is that this Fender stereo is actually really nice sounding. It's a 10-speaker system. It's an optional upgrade, of course, but I really liked it. As far as, body-on-frame truck, mid-sized truck stereos, so they don't really have very much. I mean, the Colorado offers a Bose stereo. It's nothing impressive. The B&O system in the Ford Ranger is nothing impressive either, from my limited testing. But so I don't know. I just feel like this is probably the best stereo in this segment. Not like anyone really cares too much in this segment, but just a nice little perk that it does have a pretty good sounding stereo. And one thing I wasn't super impressed with was that the shifter boot, just randomly one day when I put the truck into park here, it just fell off and it just dropped down. And it's just a little like clip here, so it's not super secure. That could be because this is a very early production model or something like that. But just doesn't give you a huge amount of confidence as far as the interior quality if, that's just popping right off very easily, and this truck has 2,600 miles on it. Could just be a little quirk of this one, so, don't think that they're all going to be falling apart or anything like that. But just one little thing to note there. And as far as reliability goes, that is one little thing I briefly want to mention, is that, Frontiers have proven to be pretty reliable from everything that I've seen, at least. I think there was one or two reports of a few owners, getting them up to very, very high mileage. They seem to be pretty solid trucks, especially at least the last generation. They seem to run a good long while. So I'm hoping that that trend continues here with the new Frontiers now, whether it's quite as bulletproof as the Tacomas, which is like the champ for one of the most durable vehicles on the market today. Only time will tell. But, I think that this is a really nice package with all the great tech you have here in this, the great looks, the newer powertrain now. I think it's a very compelling package. And so the last two things I really mentioned here are the fuel economy and the pricing of the Frontier. So as far as fuel economy goes, so over my now 96 miles of driving, I've been averaging 15.7 mpg. And I did do a little bit of idling to film the interior and stuff, so we'll call it 16 miles per gallon. And at 16 mpg, that is one less than the city rating. These are rated at 17 mpg in the city, 22 on the highway, and 19 combined. Now, usually with any press vehicle that I have for a week in doing this type of driving around, which is like suburban, back roads, 35 mile per hour driving for the most part, I usually average 1 to 2 mpg less with my driving style than the city rating. So this is 1 mpg less than the city rating. That falls in line with my norm, and I'm okay with that. Now, it would be nice to get a little bit better than 16 mpg in something like this. I know that, it's still a pretty big V6, but it's a brand new engine. We have a 9-speed automatic. I just wish that maybe there was a little bit more of a gain made there as far as efficiency. But then again, no other vehicle in this segment really has good efficiency unless you go for the unibody trucks. And so, that's just kind of par for the course. Maybe the Ranger will eke out a little bit better fuel economy. with its turbo 4-cylinder. But then if you want to get better fuel economy, there are 4-cylinder options in the other trucks as well, but with those you're going to have a lot less power. So, that's just a trade-off you have to decide if you want to make. The last thing to mention, though, is pricing here. So pricing, I think, is very competitive in the new Frontier, considering, again, it has what I would consider best-in-class interior, best-in-class tech. And so this one has tested with some of the add-ons it has, even beyond the regular Pro-4X and all its convenience packages and stuff. This one is about $46,500 as tested. But if you didn't get the running boards and the sport bars there on the truck bed and stuff, you'd be sitting at just under 45. It's like 44,600 or so. And so when you look at the competitors, all the other competitors are very close in pricing. For example, a Tacoma, I think, with everything that this has basically, would be about $200 more. And if you go for like a Ranger, I believe that's maybe like $400 or so less. But both the Tacoma and the Ranger are very dated vehicles. They're both, feel a little just more dated on the inside. They're just at the end of their lives, so you'll be quickly outdated, because whenever they have their new versions, the Ranger, the next generation Ranger, has already been revealed. But the Tacoma most likely will be getting a redo here in another year or so. And so it's just, as of right now, this is the freshest thing out there, and so for it to be basically the same price as all of the older competitors, I think is very impressive. Now, the only competitor that kind of will beat it a little bit on value is potentially the Chevy Colorado, because sticker price on those seems to be about $2,400 cheaper for a comparable trim. Now, it might do without one or two features, like I don't believe you can get a heated steering wheel in the Colorado, and you might be missing a feature or two, but that seems to get most of the same stuff for a couple grand less. And that is, again, also before incentives, which, by the way, it will totally depend on when you're watching this video and what the current deals are and stuff. But, as it sits right now, you might be able to get a better deal on everything else because they're not fresh and new and, redesigned and stuff. So maybe, those will in reality come out to be cheaper, but all I can do is compare MSRP versus MSRP, because that's really the only fair thing to do, again, because I can't comment on whatever deal you're offered by Bob at your dealership. So, as far as MSRPs go, I'd say this is very competitive. I really think the Frontier is towards the top of the pack, if not the best in class currently. Like I said, it just drives better than a Tacoma, in my opinion. You still have plenty of power, even if it's not quite as punchy as a Ranger. I love that you have the nicer interior, the better tech. The looks, I still have to say, I think it's the best looking truck in its segment, hands down. That, to me, is worth something as well. And so, to get all this great stuff for the same price as all the competitors, basically, I think really puts the Frontier in a very strong position right now. But let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Nissan for providing me here with the new Frontier to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.